Hey everybody, it's Chad. I will go ahead and pop this timer off here. Thanks everybody for showing up. It is, I see just about 5:01, almost 5:02, which is cool, and I've got 20 people on, so that's a pretty good showing for us to have for our first big quarterly regional mass care call. So if those that have not met me yet, my name's Chad. I actually work as your mass care manager for the region, and I actually support all the chapters and the chapter coordinators along with my volunteer partners to make sure that the mass care program is able to be successful for our clients and for you. Um, I will not give you the whole exhausting what do I do outside of work or for that matter when I deploy out, but basically I have a lot of experience before the Red Cross in fire EMS and in the Red Cross side of it, operations and mass care and planning. So definitely here to help and support all of you. I saw some names pop on of newer folks that I remember I got to meet during our surge campaign. So I do want to say welcome to everybody and a big special welcome to all of our newer volunteers that joined most recently in the wake of the two different hurricanes that have hit most recently in Florida and North Carolina. So big thanks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all of our other familiar faces, all the friends I've had on here for the last number of years. Great to see your face. So to start things off, we did have a reorganization in the Red Cross. It's not a big shake, and it doesn't really change a whole lot in the way that we provide service to you and you to our clients. What does change is that we're trying to be more intentional about our communications and our cadence on different topics. So, for example, we will be having a quarterly mass care call, and that quarterly mass care call will be found on Volunteer Connection, and you can hop that in. The goal is to make sure that that quarterly mass care call does not conflict with any other chapter or regional meeting. So we give you the chance to really engage and not have to flip a coin or choose. So that's kind of where that comes from. And this is our first one of these. I will show you in a moment about Volunteer Connection, how you can navigate that to find these and register, and you can share with your friends. We also will be taking the recording of this and posting onto YouTube, and I'll show you where to find that as well. Let me put a little reminder here on the YouTube channel. We have we've had this for years, but it sounds like a couple people didn't know about that, so we'll kind of go back to that piece too. So cadence-wise, we'll be meeting as a region, just as anyone at all. It's open to anybody. It's not just a mass care gap. It's if you're just curious. We're going to try, since we do this quarterly, to have these more volunteer-led. And we're going to come back to that in just a moment as well. We're going to talk today about 6 different topics, basically. We'll talk about Web EOC. I'll explain what that is and why it matters to you. And then we'll also talk about the Shelter iPads. They look very shockingly similar to this, and we'll kind of get a little more about that. We're going to talk about sheltering, some lessons learned, and some things here in the region about that. Talk about Volunteer Connection. I may move that one up a little bit to kind of make sure we know where things go, and if I could lose somebody to dinner, they'll at least have that information. And then we'll wrap up with Ask Me Anything within reason. So there's that. So we're trying to make sure that we empower our volunteer leaders, and a lot of my volunteer partners across all the different things I've touched over the last few years are kind of in flux and figuring out where their places are, and me working out with them what they're going to be responsible for. But the goal will be to announce very soon the regional volunteer partners for each of the mass care lines of service. So that would be sheltering, feeding, DES, and reunification, to make sure you know who those points of contacts are, and they will become your subject matter expert leaders who will help lead these calls and hopefully take over leading them. And then they will be the contact points for the chapter-based mass care coordinators. And sheltering, preparing for sheltering, rostering mass care strike teams, and performing that sheltering task will be at the chapter level, led by a chapter mass care coordinator that reports to the chapter disaster program manager. I know that they work very closely with the chapter disaster program specialist, and we're going to get some more details on that out here shortly as well to make sure we have that. When it comes to our feeding, our DES, which is distribution of emergency supplies, and reunification, those are going to be more regionally based teams that we'll be using to make sure we have feeding agreements in place, and we have drills and preparedness for mass feeding operations. That team will also be coming out with canteen guidance for our disaster action teams and for our mass care strike teams, and really kind of working through that piece of it. Reunification is a big topic. And the goal here in our going forward cadence meetings is to make sure that we put this out and we really hit one of those topics each really hard in each of the upcoming quarterly meetings. So this week, or this quarter rather, we'll talk about sheltering. And then the next quarter, we'll talk about feeding, and then we'll talk about reunification, and then DES, which is that distribution of emergency supplies. So we'll try and kind of hit each of those since this is more of an engagement call. Please make sure you put in your volunteer hours for this so that we can make sure we really understand how we're engaging and we lead these topics, and then we'll kind of put other little pieces and parts of potpourri in here as well. Certainly, my volunteer partners and I are willing to hop into any chapter-based mass care meeting you have to hit on any topics or refresh any topics you have questions to. You can do that by reaching out as a mass care coordinator through your chapter disaster program manager, and they will reach back out through the regional chain to us, and we can get that coordinated for you. So your primary conduit from a chapter level is through your chapter program manager. And then my boss is Tim Callahan, who's on here. He's the Senior Disaster Program Manager. So reaching out to them and we'll make this all work for you. And certainly those volunteer to volunteer communications are great. So those volunteer partners, once we get those announced, will be critical for you as well. The option or the way we're kind of designing this, as we understand, as the National Red Cross across all the regions of the United States, is that the chapter program leaders, so the regional program leads for each of these sections, will be the face of the program to be able to actually lead the meetings and do that, so that the paid staff members will be focusing on more of the strategy and the support feature of that. So more to come on that, but I wanted to make sure we got that out right up front. Please don't look for this every month. It will not exist, but it is on there as a regional quarterly communication. And then each of your chapters will have, as they have their cadence, we'll be having a chapter-based mass care meeting, of which we can certainly be a part of that, but reach out to your chapter disaster program manager to locate your chapter mass care coordinator and hook up with them on that piece of it. I will tell you, since we're kind of out of order for just a moment here, that if you go to Volunteer Connection, and you'll see your name and everything pop up here, you can go to My Groups, and you should be a part of the DCS Mass Care team for Central and Southern Ohio. If you're not, feel free to let your chapter mass care or chapter disaster program manager know, and also your chapter mass care coordinator. If you aren't sure who that is, you can drop me an email and we'll get that all sorted for you. But you should be able to see that mass care team as a team member in mass care. And that's how we can see this page of the group share. Starts with this little mass care graphic here. You can see all of the members we have of the group by hitting View All Members. We're going to be using this pretty frequently to populate news and calendar events. And then coming soon, you'll also see a little icon that'll be here to the right that says Pages. And we're going to break out for each of the sections, sheltering, feeding, DES, and reunification, a section there so that you can go to those pages and get more information and news. One other unsung hero is going to be pets. That is a newer program that's coming under mass care. So we'll come back to more of that, and we'll be seeing more of that here shortly. But we can certainly be having a chance for you to come in here. You can add your own hours. You can see the directory. Their file will put up shares. Eventually, if we have any forms, they'll be here too. But this is going to be your one-stop shop to really come to the chapter mass care or the DCS regional mass care team group share page, which you find under My Groups. And then you can kind of get information here and communicate that way. So that is through Volunteer Connection. If you're looking for some of these amazing engagement opportunities, going to your Volunteer Connection and going to My Shifts, the DCS Central and Southern Ohio Disaster Engagement Calendar. So all of these mass care and logistics, when it comes to that, regional engagements are black. So if you look through that and look for the black ones, you can see here the chapter or the quarterly regional mass care town hall. We have that one right here for you. And if you want to look and see, for example, upcoming ones, you can zip along and find the next one. So like in December, we're having an engagement for logistics. And you can find those and register. These are all set to open 100 days before. So we're trying to make sure we work on all that so that they're open for you to be able to hop in there and register, and it'll send you a reminder as well. So there's that. Really trying to up our using of Everbridge, which is a mass communication system, using Volunteer Connection to make sure we provide the most communication to you as possible and really work together at that chapter mass care level as well as regional level. On YouTube, if you go there and you type in CSOR, C-S-O-R, and disaster, we have our own little page. And you'll see our big old challenge coin down here. So you can actually go to CSOR Disaster, and they have here a number of videos. I know they just uploaded the All Disaster Volunteer Call as well from November. So all of these are generally here for you to be able to come to and look at. And we will be posting links whenever we can in the disaster dispatch as well. So all of these are ways that they're here for you to view information, support, and go from there. So that's our cadence conversation and our conversation about volunteer connection. So I want to kind of jump off, use your virtual hand, or if you want to come on camera, you can use your real hand. It's up to you. If you've ever heard of the term Web EOC, and I am waiting patiently, I see Carolyn's hand will go flying up in a minute. And she gets a large headache at the occipital when I say Web EOC, I'm sure. So there's that. Excellent. Go ahead and put those down. So Web EOC is a platform that many people use in the nation. So FEMA uses it, the state of Ohio uses it, and the American Red Cross all use it to capture information and share information so that we can be successful in our operations and have what's called a COOP, a Common Operational Picture, a COP. Okay. Why that matters to all of us is that on operations now, we are capturing our feeding numbers when we are doing mass mobile feeding. And when we're handing out supplies through DES, Distribution of Emergency Supplies, we're capturing that as well. The way that we report that up is right now via a paper-based solution. We do a daily report that gets passed up. So if you're in a shelter and you're letting know how many meals you've served, or you're out driving an IRV or a MERV, or you're at a fixed feeding site, you're reporting how many meals that you actually served and how many snacks you served. That gets reported up so that the person at the disaster headquarters can enter into Web EOC by county how many meals we served and such. That way we can see on a dashboard, we know where the demand for service is by county or by place, and we can make sure we have enough meals for the next day, and we can accurately report the services that we provided as the American Red Cross. So you are a part of that, whether you're in the system or not. And I will freely admit I was going to show you the system, but as all good laid plans, my access is gone. So it is what it is. So we're going to talk about it rather than I'll show you the Web EOC piece of it, but we are looking to have more training for that. Right now, there is not a big, huge training ability to show you, but I can walk you through it. I will say I agree with National Headquarters. It's very user intuitive. It is very easy to use. You will not be using a ton of it on the feeding and the DES side, but it's important for you to know that the numbers matter when you're asked to report how many of things you've served or passed out to clients and such. That is important and it's critical because that's how we will be reporting it up the chain. So it's important to know that. Also, if you happen to be a disaster sensor, you're out there in the field doing SRT, which is shelter resident transition. You're out doing sheltering, feeding, you're doing mobile, anything else. And someone tells you, hey, is there a number you can call if you can on Teams? There should be a phone number. Let's just give it one check in here. Give me 1 second to find that out. Let's open this up. Yep, and I can investigate this later on too to see why it's not in the invite, but let's do this. I'm putting it in chat. If someone could please feel free to pass this along to anyone who needs to call in. It's in the chat there. There's the phone number for you to use and then the conference ID. Make sure they hit that pound number and get them in there too. Good question. Thanks for asking that, Helen. The reason I say that is that part matters, just to know. And if you are a disaster sensor and someone says, hey, we need help or we've missed an area over here, passing that up to your supervisor so we can get that in as a request. They're using Web EOC now to pass along requests for services of feeding and sheltering and such too. So while you may not have your hands in the system, you are part of that system and you're a critical part in the field. One way you may actually be in the system pretty often, they have now launched a reunification ability via Web EOC. I know Janet Littler and some other folks volunteered to virtually deploy to the hurricanes by being a team that's on call, and they were using the Web EOC platform, so where people could go in and put in requests and for areas that people were looking for loved ones, they could put that information in as a form, and then they would be able to pick that up in Web EOC and work that contact, much in the same way we used to work the Safe and Well website, or some of our other iterations of that since Safe and Well went away. So it's still a newer thing. I don't have a lot of information on that one, but I wanted to at least say we are closer to a system than we've ever been. It's not as automatically matching like Safe and Well was, but we're much closer to than just being an Excel spreadsheet. So that's good. So that's that Web EOC piece of it. Once I get better information, or if we get a video of any kind, I will send that back out to the group and I will post it over here in our group chat, which I'm showing right now. I'm moving my hand around here. With it says Mass Care, you will be able to find that in like files. And I'm going to try and also, if possible, I don't know how many file sizes you can use, try and post a copy of this video link also in files. So really trying to drive everyone here for that. Any questions on that WebEOC piece of it? Carolyn, I stayed away from the NSS piece of it because if NSS, if you ever know what that stands for, it stands for National Shelter System. It's in an iteration that it used to be, and it's coming, but I just don't want to put anyone on the spot and say it's here or it's coming next week or whatever. It's just been a really big process. And Carolyn, big thanks to her, has with her FROST team, which is the Field Remote Operations Support Team. They've been a big piece of that, and I appreciate it. But anything generalized, Carolyn, I'm missing on that piece of it, or do we think we're pretty good to shy away from that at the moment?
I think we probably just need to shy away at the moment. There's no new news.
Perfect. I appreciate that. I'd rather give you no news than bad news, folks, or poor news. So I appreciate that. Good deal, good deal, good deal. So I also am trying to work with Janet Littler, who is a new program specialist here in the region, and some other folks to hopefully by the time that we get to the Q3 meeting, which would be about reunification, have some better information and maybe some good mission moments that they could come on and talk to us about reunification in WebEOC. So kind of moving on really quick here, I was pointing out this lovely piece of hardware here, this iPad. So coming soon, and I have a whole list of them sitting here that are getting programmed, each chapter will receive at least one, hopefully two iPads. The iPads, which by the way, they have to have a password on them, but it's Red Cross. And I'll make sure we have it a little easier for you to find so you can log into it. The iPads will be in the custody of the chapter. They don't go in trailers or anything like that. And if we have a shelter open or a reunification mission at like a Friends and Family Reception Center or something to that effect, they would then use these iPads to help with disability integration services, like folks that need help with hearing impaired or visually impaired, or we need to use Google Translate to be able to communicate in a different language with our clients. And then they're also used to put things into SCIA, which is the Shelter Client Intake, help me here, application, I believe is the way that A is. And that is the way that we're able to visualize and work through our clients. Before anybody asks, the tablets are locked down. They're not to be deployed with DAT or put into DAT bags or used for any kind of client casework model of any kind. And they are not coming with any kind of MiFi experience. They will be using the shelter Wi-Fi if we have a shelter open, and if need be, DST can deploy, which is Disaster Services Technology, can deploy one of our Starlink systems that would give immediate Wi-Fi to that shelter area. They are exclusively being used for that disability integration piece and for the sheltering component. And we'll have those out to the chapters. Our goal is to have those out as an early Christmas gift to every chapter, hopefully by the second week of December. And it'll look just like this. It'll have a black screen on it. It's got a red rugged case, which is fantastic. There is a shoulder strap for it that you can use so that you can have someone wear it as a crossbody if they're trying to do intake, or somebody that has a visual impairment. It also has a little carry strap on it like this. And what I also like is for those of us that have bad hands, this is actually a little handhold that you can use to work with that shoulder iPad as well. So that's a great tool for us. We're very excited. The hope is that we may also be emerging and using that in our shelter survey forms eventually. We're still working through that shelter survey process. That part's coming out as well. But I did want to let everybody know on this call those are coming. And again, there should be at least one, if not two, in every chapter by Christmas. And they are used exclusively for sheltering and DI. So there's that piece of it. So that gets us to sheltering. So I want to really thank anybody at all who deployed either virtually or in person to support sheltering and these last several disasters we've had. That can be our local ones. So we've been on a roll with multifamily fires lately, especially in the central Ohio area, and also for our larger national disasters. A lot of great lessons learned, and I'm hoping that we'll get some more information out and be able to post it over here on our group share page in the news section, or some files in there too of some great lessons learned as they come out from national headquarters. But here's some things I can tell you for now. We do have the ability to do just-in-time training for sheltering. That is a true statement. But the more we can train people before the disaster happens, the better we will all be successful with. That is a true statement. We are not doing, if you have been around for a while, facility use agreements anymore until we actually open a shelter for a disaster, and the logistics team will do that form, and the logistics team will do all the facility paperwork now. That is on them. It will not be on the mass care team anymore. And that's coming in through our national group as well. So we're working through that piece of it. We are trying to be very diligent here close to home on trying to give every opportunity for our mass care strike teams to go out and do shelter surveys. You are the best person to do that because you're going to be using the shelter when the time comes, but we are going to be kind of limiting down how many of those we do because we are trying to be carrying costs for that. So we'll have upcoming engagements for people. Hopefully the regional program lead for sheltering will be able to also maybe do some little lunch and learns or some little afternoon engagements like this to talk about all the different ways we learn things in sheltering. But some of the big lessons learned we've heard so far is be flexible. It never goes according to plan, or we call it, I think Brad calls it the plan never survives first contact with the enemy. Several instances where we have trained how to do sheltering one way, but the shelter got cut off due to mudslides or due to storms, or we've had to adapt to meet our client needs. So being flexible is a key component of being in a shelter. The second thing is making sure that we are courteous to our clients. Sometimes they try our patience for sure, but we have to be courteous to them because we are there a part of their worst day. And we need to make sure that, we chose to be there. They did not. So really trying to be cognizant of that mental health, which is great if you've taken the psychological first aid class that we have on Edge. It's always a very, very good class. It reminds you of some ways to really talk through that with folks and being attentive to their needs. It's a critical thing we've noticed in sheltering and more. I will also tell you, though, that we've learned that we need to take on less. And I mean that from those of us who do this are usually very empathetic. We take on people's problems, right? So we'll see something that needs done and we have a work ethic and we keep on going and going like the Energizer Bunny. It is critical for your own mental health and the way that we present ourselves to others and the way that we speak to others, that you do take your breaks and you do, even all the way up to being the shelter manager, you take your day off or days off if you have that. You don't sleep in the shelter. You have a place to stay, whether that be a staff shelter where you're surrounded by staff members and not around your clients, or if you are fortunate enough to have a hotel room, you need that time to decompress and you need those breaks away so that you can keep yourself mentally aware and mentally awake and not pop off at a client who's having a bad day. That's something we've learned from a couple different evaluations that we've gotten back and from folks that have come back. The last thing is also the answer to everything is not the mass care procurement card. We do have those mass care procurement cards out with supervisors and above for those emergency situations, but you have to be diligent enough to know that, is it something I need right now for a client, or can it wait until the fulfillment team comes tomorrow and we can order that the right way and work it through the right direction so we get the best price, or if it's being done in kind. That's a big thing to make sure we just don't immediately whip out the plastic card and try and buy it. At the same side of that coin, we have to understand that in-kind donations, while they are in kind, as in not a cash check, that donation still has a monetary value to the Red Cross. So as shelter managers and shelter supervisors, we must not take a lot of donations. Like, we're not going to take a lot of food donations and such, because of the fact that those in-kind donations can kind of rack up. So when in doubt, the best thing is always check with your supervisor. If you're a shelter service associate, which I call the most important job they have out there, speak to your supervisor at the shelter or the shelter manager and get guidance whenever you're not sure. And then those shelter managers should at all times, feel free to reach up to the HQ, headquarters sheltering lead, for information and for advice and for direction. But the good thing is that we empower our shelter managers. In the absence of communication, you have been taught and we trust you, and you can make the best decision you have with the best information you've got. So that's kind of what we've learned lesson-wise for sheltering across the last several operations. We're not done yet. Now tropical storm, maybe Hurricane Sarah, has formed in the Gulf. We're still watching to see where that goes and monitor that. That hopefully will be the last hurrah of hurricane season for this year, but you never know. We'll see how that goes. And then we'll turn our attention to the west for wildfire season. So if you are someone that likes to go out and do that, that's always an option to you. And you can always reach out to myself or to Tim Callahan or any number of us that have deployed to the wildfires to see that that's a very unique experience, or rather a unique, it can't be very unique, but a unique experience in the way that we do sheltering, and it's available for you as well. And then I hate to say it, but when it comes to winter, as well as tornadoes can happen at any point in time, and so can flooding. So they keep calling this a constant state of operation. I get that, but that's always an option for you to deploy out. And then closer to home, I hate to say it, we have a number of things that happen here at home where we need to do shelter drills or shelter engagements or preparedness activities for sheltering, or we actually open a shelter. So lots of ways to engage. You get to choose that by setting your level of engagement you want, by reaching out to your chapter program manager, your chapter program coordinator. You can also reach out to myself and I can redirect back to the right people to let us know how much time you'd like to spend, and we can get you set up with some tasks. So that's our sheltering bit of it. Any questions at all regarding sheltering specifically, or things you've got feedback on specifically from sheltering to this point? And you can put your hand up, you can come off of mute. Only thing I'll take is bad jokes and fireworks. Perfect. All right. I've got 5:28, which puts me 2 minutes ahead of my schedule, which I'm pretty happy about. So let me slow the pace down for a minute now that I've shot a lot of information your way. And let me go ahead and unshare my screen for a moment and really kind of ask what's on your minds. What are some things that are popping in your mind if you've deployed recently, or you've just had thoughts, or you've seen things kind of reorganize? What are some things that are on your mind about anything at all mass care related? How can I help answer some questions, or how can I give you some feedback? Anyone at all? Somebody, come on. This has never been a quiet group. Oh, Carol, go for it. What do you got, Carol Sims?
Carol Sims has a question.
Hit it.
There is a line between mass care and canteening. And
There
there's a big, fat, blurry line at this moment. Years ago, it used to be pretty cut and dry. The DAT team that responded does the canteen, and that was it. Now it's kind of it's convoluted as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, good call. So canteening is actually a mass care activity. Now, they're oftentimes, because they are the first ones on the scene, and obviously the mass care piece of it, or the canteen piece of it, can end up being for a small group of people. DAT teams often carry water and snacks with them, and that's why we provide canteen guidance for them to follow, so they can do canteening for that piece of it. However, since canteening is a mass care activity, that is why each chapter should be working together to have a mass care strike team, because if we have a call like for a industrial fire, we will not be seeing clients there and doing casework. So we would send a canteen team, which would follow the canteen guidance, and they would do that mass care mission of feeding and canteening. Also on our multifamily fires, it is very often we have a mass care team go out with a DAT team, so that the DAT team can work on our clients and making sure that they have casework if appropriate, or get client rosters and such. And that canteen or mass care team can take care of those mass care needs, like passing out blankets and passing out snacks and water, and if need be, canteen for our firefighters and public safety officials as well. So it is very much a mass care activity, and we're providing guidance on that. We're updating that guidance as well, because when it comes to canteening, we have very strict rules as to what types of food we're offering and what way we're offering it and what kinds of things we're buying, because it is a thing that fits into our budget. So you have to be very cognizant of what we're buying and who we're buying stuff for and how we're doing it.
Okay. All the canteen calls in Northern Kentucky seem to be handled by DAT.
Right, and I've noticed that as well. So I mean, that's where that question's
That's
going
why
to have
I'm
to be.
confused, because I'm in
Yeah.
Northern Kentucky.
Yep, they're going to have to. That is something that the chapter mass care coordinator and the chapter disaster program manager and specialist are going to be working on. And if the answer is that it is best for them or easiest for the chapter to utilize a team that is mostly DAT, as long as they realize that it's a mass care mission, so they're following the guidance of the mass care canteening guidance, that's perfectly fine. But that is where that chapter kind of comes in. So the region side of it, we set the guidance and the structure and the policy part of it, right? And we oversee that part of it. And the chapter, so the chapter program manager and specialists and the coordinators, they execute the mission there at that tactical level, at that actual level. So it very well may be, and we are in a region where a lot of our volunteers choose to volunteer in many different ways. They choose to be part of the DAT team and preparedness team and the mass care team as well. So we do have a lot of crossover. It's something that Tim Callahan, as the SDPM, and I have spoken about a lot, is trying to provide that generalized guidance so that any team that goes out, they're still reading off the same playbook, and we're doing it the same way, even if it's a DAT team or it's a mass care strike team, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. And then I just have one other comment. That
Yeah.
nice little iPad that you showed,
Mhm.
I think that's fantastic, but we're going to have to be very cautious when you're in a shelter situation that does not get set down anywhere, because it will disappear.
You're absolutely right. The good news is they are all tracked. We did put trackers on them, so that is good. But you are correct in the fact of it's meant to be for use as a registration type tool, so it should be at that registration desk. But you are correct; it should not just be floating around or left unsecured. And that's a great tip, Carol. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and then they need to be charged up before we have an event.
Yep.
I
So
don't
they
know
should.
when you have them stored. know,
Each chapter will have them, and you're correct. We want to keep those. We want to keep those charged, and hopefully use them often in drills and exercise and such. So that's a great piece of feedback for. I believe since you're down in Cincinnati Tri-State, like Lawanda and Dash and those folks, to let them know, to let them how they'll be best to work. And thanks, Helen. Helen, unfortunately, has been at the last two shelters we've had, and that since they are a newer iPad, they don't take long to charge. They keep charged pretty well. But I completely get what you're saying, Carol. The worst thing for us to do is have a great piece of equipment and then you go to use it and it's dead. You're exactly right.
Can it charge off a battery?
Yeah. Yep.
Because all the phones, you have the little battery pack or whatever, you could use.
Yeah.
That? Okay.
That's a good, but Carol, you mentioned something really good. I like that you said there. I'm glad we're recording this so I can make sure I can follow through on it. Maybe the good suggestion also was for us to invest in one power bank for each of them too. So we have that power bank as well. That's a good call. Thanks for that. It's a good suggestion.
Okay. Now I'll shut up because I've monopolized it.
No, you got the ball rolling because Carolyn's got her hand up now. So thank you for that. Anytime you got something, I appreciate that. Thank you, Carol. Miss Burns, what do you got for us?
Well, you mentioned the iPads and using those for Skya when you're in a shelter environment. And I just wanted to bring this up. This is a problem that we encountered with the 2 hurricane DRs that we've had ongoing here in the past month or two. Having a single computer set up on a table or having one iPad and passing it off to somebody to do entry, they still have to sign in as themselves in Skya. And that's one of the problems we encountered. They had one laptop, they'd set it down on a reception table in the morning, somebody would sign into it and everybody would use it all day long. And every entry that got made into Skya was under one person's name. And that's not the way Skya is supposed to operate. And it's a security issue too. yeah, not so much with the iPad because you're probably carrying that around with you, but you could leave it lay on a table and walk away, and you're logged into Skya, and there everybody has access to all this security information. So I just want to mention, if we are going to use the iPads in that type of situation, and you do hand it to somebody else to use, you need to sign out and let them sign in as themselves.
That's a great point, and you're right. You can't just log into one. You're exactly right. The good part about the iPad, and I only call it a good part because it is what it is. That's why it has the generic password on it. Is that it will, after like 2 minutes of inactivity, will lock itself out. But you're correct. When you still put that password in, you're still logged in. So we
Right.
need to be really diligent about logging out. And I would say the same thing too, to be careful if you are a caseworker or a shelter resident transition person and we're working off of computers. I think Carolyn's point is also valid too, to make sure you're signing out of that system if you walk away so that people don't have access to case information. That's a good hit. I appreciate that. Anything else you've found, Carolyn, from the last several different hurricanes, and I think you've now touched every one of them, when it comes to lessons learned on Skya, now that we've had a really good chance to use it? Oh, incognito mode. That's a good choice too. I appreciate that one. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Carolyn.
Probably not anything new and different. Skya, has its challenges. One thing we found that people are pretty diligent about getting the clients into Skya when everything's, beginning to up and run, and then they forget about them. And then I'll get a request to close a shelter, and there's still 103 clients checked into Skya. That and the ability to transfer clients from one shelter to another was a challenge, and we did a lot of training in that area. But nothing, as far as Skya is concerned, nothing, no big earth-shattering things.
Okay. And I'm looking real quick here so I can drop it in the chat. And if you don't have it, I'll make sure I put this also into our group share page for you too. There is a sandbox for Skya. And a sandbox is simply a training site. So you can hop in there and you're not making any kind of entry into a live system that would harm anybody, but it's a great way for you to understand. And here it is. Let me copy this into the chat so you can kind of understand how to feel free and how to use some of this stuff and how we can make sure that we're successful. It's always a good thing. The worst time to learn how to use the Skya system is right on the first time you have to actually use it. So there is a really good thing about that. And then you can always go to a thing called OneSource. And the way you can do that on the web is simply just typing in OneSource, ONESCOURCE.redcross.org. And you log in with your volunteer connection credentials, unless you're an employee, and then use your employee one. But either way, it gets you in, and you can type in any number of things, just like Google, like Skya, and it will take you to our informational page. You can read about what Skya is. It takes you to the training side of it or the live site. So I'd always encourage folks to use that OneSource page to kind of learn little pieces here and there about things. So that's a great call on that part too.
I might mention also that there's some new and different things in Skya that people might not be aware of. Meals can now be ordered through Skya.
Nice.
So, and we've been using that on a couple of the DRs. So, just there's different things. We can do the daily shelter report through Skya now.
That's
and
awesome.
No more writing it on a piece of paper, taking a picture of it with your iPhone and sending it to your supervisor.
We've done that. I'm laughing because we've done that, and I'm well aware of that one. That's cool. That's really awesome. Oh, I logged into to Skya as well, just to view a couple things on my side. I know I can't share the screen right now, just to see, and it does have an entire thing now for new meal order and such. So that's awesome. I'm really glad to see that. The hope, obviously, by the time that we do these, we have these national mass care calls eventually and such. My hope is that the more we get this kind of information, to add that to our group share page as news, and then also shoot a quick email out to you folks and say, hey, check the group share page for some new information on this. So I'm trying to use that as a way for us to communicate kind of like an old school bulletin board, which is on here on Volunteer Connection, just for a way for us to all stay informed. Because so many things change and so much happens. So thanks, Miss Burns. And if you see more things like that, please let us know so we can hop it on the news feed and I'll be prepared. The biggest thing I will say, and that's why I really count on Mr. Burns, Mrs. Burns, Shauna, on Lynn, on all these folks that, and Rose, I see you on here too, Robert, all you folks, is because we shelter and we go out so much in doing sheltering. There's always something to learn. And usually by the time that I go out again, we've decided to change something else, which is fine. We constantly keep changing and evolving, but we don't want to be out there and be learning it for the first time. So the more we can share these nuggets of wisdom with everybody else, the better. I love that plan. So thank you for that. What other questions do we have? Anything anyone wants to share about their recent experiences out in feeding or DES or mass care sheltering, or any other questions, comments, or concerns? Okay. I will wrap it up with these couple things then. One, I really want to appreciate your time. Thank you all for taking time out of your evening just to get this information. We ended up with 25 people on here. That's really awesome compared to the last time we did this. So I appreciate that. We'll keep letting people know and reminding folks so we can have it even more the next time. The next time we'll talk about feeding. So that'll be the next quarter. We'll talk about feeding. My hope at that point in time is to have out a lot of information on how we're doing feeding agreements and such. A feeding agreement is not a contract. It is simply a way for us to understand the capabilities of local restaurants and caterers and our partners like the Southern Baptists, and who we can call at 2 o'clock in the morning, so to speak, to activate those abilities. So it's not a contract. It's not really anything of a PO. It's just simply an understanding between us as to what their capabilities are, what our asks are, and who we go for. So that is something we're going to talk about, ironing all that out for us, get that information out too. Going forth, the other thing we're going to be trying to get out some information to you folks on here before the holiday is about our mass care shelter trailers. We call them shelter strike trailers. They're set up for 50 people each, and they are a shelter asset, so they're under the mass care team to make sure that they are packed properly. And that's something that can be coming out to really understand that and how we pack those. So we're having that conversation. And then for any of those that are interested in pulling trailers, this is a logistics function, but we'll be doing a logistics workshop, hopefully coming up soon, to do trailer qualifications so we can make sure people can safely pull trailers. And at the same point in time, we'll talk about ERV, ERV, and MERV, MRV training to become a qualified ERV and MERV driver. It's very, very simplistic. We just got to make sure we have the right Robert's Rules of Order in place so that we can get that out there. And the trailer and MERV ERV training will be conducted at the chapter level. So it won't be a regionalized thing. It'll be done by chapter leaders at the chapter level so that we can keep it as close to you folks as possible to be successful. So there is that. And then I do plan on, we'll get more information out to you. Part of my goals that I was given for this coming year is we're going to do some exercises and stuff too. So we'll find lots of ways to keep you engaged throughout the year. Don't hesitate to give us a shout if you have any questions or concerns. Keep checking out that group share page on Volunteer Connection for the latest news and calendar information. And with that, I want to say thank you all again and have a fantastic night. Bye, y'all.